How you doing today, Daniel, Mr. Cuervo Racing? Thanks for watching the channel. And if you are new to the channel, if you want to, please go and subscribe, and you can get notifications of when we get new videos. Today we're talking about fuel injection versus carburation. This is a question I get asked quite a bit. Which one's going to make more power? Which one's right for the application, and which route to go. So basically I got two of the very common options here. The 54 throttle body, which I use for engines up to about 100 horsepower. This is from Empire Industries. So we sell this unit and sell injectors and whatnot for it as well, for gas or for ethanol. And then we have this is a 56 carburetor from Electron Fuel Systems on Facebook. The substantial difference between the two is on the fuel injection. You have a fuel pump, an injector, and a lot of different electronic sensors to control when you're getting fuel, how much, and where. Versus the carburetor, you just have a needle inside the bore there. That needle is ground flat on one side. Let's see. It's ground flat on the front face, and it's tapered to meter fuel flow. And then you have a secondary, they call them power jets. These lines up here come into an orifice here, and there's a metering jet in there that controls flow. Basically, has two different options for fuel delivery there. And on the throttle body, you do have an option for a second injector here and a secondary fuel rail. But basically, the biggest difference between the two is airflow. And airflow at a specific diameter, as well as cleanliness of air, being turbulent or non-turbulent airflow. And basically, on a flow bench measuring flow, if you have air that's running straight and smooth without turbulence in it, it's going to flow higher, even though the bore diameter can be the same. So here on the throttle body, basically, if this diameter hole and the diameter on the carburetor were the same size and this bell were the same, basically your biggest restriction is this plate and shaft through the center. So you're not only reducing the volume or the effective diameter here, because you have this plate and shaft in there, you're also causing turbulence as the air hits the face of the shaft, the face of the plate, or has to go around that shaft there. So that not only reduces airflow, but in the process it's reducing power. So basically what we see on a flow bench is this throttle body is effective up to a certain point, and then the carburetor at the same bore diameter is much more effective in sustaining RPM, sustaining smooth airflow through higher RPMs. Because when you open this one up, the only thing you have left in the bore is one needle. You do have these power jets sitting down there. So basically you only have one needle, and that needle is only a few millimeter thick. So airflow around it can get around it and straighten back out fairly quickly, versus the throttle body, when you have it open, that shaft is that plate is 54 millimeter long, so you're running into airflow and restriction across that plate diameter for that entire distance. With the plate in there, the other thing that's happening is every time you have an increase in length of a tube, you're seeing an increase in resistance due to length. So what's happening here is when you have this open, you're turning that from just having an outer diameter, you're splitting it in half. Now he has extra resistance across both sides of that plate. So a lot goes into play there. Basically, the throttle bodies we use for dune applications, trail, some racing stuff up to mid-high 90s, they're effective. And then we get into running the electrons above that. And for two reasons. Simplicity, where you still have an electronic system on here when you run the carburetor, but you have basically three components. You have the pickup sensor, which you're running on both EFI and fuel injection. That's picking up the signal from the flywheel. And you have a coil, and you have a CDI box, but there's no other sensors that are going into that CDI box. You do have the ability to have a clutch switch control, a launch limiter on that, but you don't have a coolant temp sensor, an air temp sensor, an air pressure sensor, and a throttle position sensor going into that. So you eliminate all that. You also don't have a fuel pump. We run these gravity fed, so you're not dealing with any electronics control of running a fuel pump on top of that. All you need is a small volume of fuel in a tank, a little bit of half inch, an inch of fuel height inside the tank to give enough pressure to feed this bowl. So in that, you're able to run a smaller fuel tank versus the fuel injection. Most of the factory fuel pump needs about a gallon in the tank to be effective and to not have cavitation issues. So you eliminate a lot of the BS that goes along with the injection system, ultimately cutting weight in the end, and weight is horsepower. So that's kind of my review, fuel injection versus carburation. We have put carburetors on dune bikes. We've done a few conversions where we put a different motor into a different frame, and it's easiest to do it on carburation. That is possible. I guess you would say the biggest downside of running a big flat side carb like this in a dune application is the travel of your thumb throttle to open this diameter of plate is substantially increased versus the throttle body is on a it just has to turn this cam 90 degrees. So this no matter what diameter size throttle body you put, your thumb throw is always going to be the same, versus as you increase bore size on the carburetor, the thumb throttle your thumb has to travel further and further. So that does come into play for a dune application that will create somewhat of a nuisance or something that you have to get used to. We do make a thumb throttle box specifically for these bigger carburetors, so if you drag guys are looking for custom thumb throttles for these 54 millimeter and above, we have all the way up a throttle box that'll open up to 60 millimeter. So that's it for today. Sorry for the long video. I'm going to come back with a dissection of this electron, and you can check that out. Thanks for watching.